The morning in Austin was as warm as a latte freshly frothed. On South Congress Avenue, the delivery van of Hearth and Hope rolled past thick canopies of almond trees. Carrying trays of butter, croissants, and loaves of hot sourdough, I sat in the passenger seat, hugging my notebook to my chest as if it were a secret pressing to be let out. Last night, one line, then two. Two tiny pink lines, neat as threads tied to the future, tugging me toward a different life. Testing jalapeno cheese savory scones today, boss. Miguel, head chef at Café No. 3, turned the wheel, asking as if it were the only matter in the world. Yes, put them in the 9 to 11 a.m. slot for the office crowd, I replied, forcing my voice to sound casual. In my head, the first sentence I'd use with Darren kept circling. I have news. We're going to have a baby. You're going to be a dad. Each line was a door opening into a sunlit room. We had talked about children before, on lazy Sunday mornings on the sofa, when the aroma of Ethiopian beans filled the windows and over the hum of the roaster. Darren would say, "Someday, I want to carry a baby around the cafes so they'll grow up familiar with the smell of flour and butter." I had laughed, nodding as if sealing a promise without needing signatures. Hearth and Hope wasn't just a cafe bakery. It was the breakfast chain my mother had started from a tiny night market cart, and which I stubbornly carried forward as her daughter, unwilling to let go of memories. In 3 years, we had grown into 5 locations, pastel Gilo facades, chalkboard menus handwritten and changed daily, a small corner for take a book, leave a book. Every morning, there were regulars who claimed the same wooden chair by the window to sip the weather with their cappuccino, and strangers drawn in by the scent of waffles. I knew many of their names. As for Darren, he had stepped in like a customer who stumbled into my story and never left, insisting he knew how to scale this warm-hearted brand into something bigger without losing its soul. We could launch a pop-up on the east side, partner with the organic farm I know, tell the story of ingredient origins. Customers would love it, he said, each word dripping like honey. When the van stopped at location No. 2, I helped Miguel carry trays down to the kitchen, checked the lunchtime roster, nodded to Suki at the espresso bar, reminded her to test the new batch of beans. Everything moved like a dance. Everyone knew the steps, too. Only my heartbeat was offbeat. In my tote bag lay the paper bag from the pharmacy, the thinnest yet heaviest thing in the world. I had planned to stop by the supermarket for a tiny gift box, tie it with ribbon, and tonight set it on the dinner table beside the baked egg dish Darren liked. I pictured his face opening it, his warm brown eyes lighting up, the words, "You're kidding?" before pulling me into his arms. The thought made the corners of my mouth curl by themselves. By 10:30, I headed across to headquarters, a 1-story White House behind location No. 1, where we kept the meeting room, archives, accounting office. In the hallway, framed photos showed my mother behind her old cart, hair tied back, gaze both firm and tender. I brushed my fingers along the wood, as if touching her hand. "I'm going to be a mother, Mom." The words rose in my throat, making it ache. The bedroom door stood ajar. Darren had lately taken to working here late mornings. Polishing the pitch deck, he said, would help raise funds for the pop-up project. I lifted my hand to the doorknob, then froze. A low, smooth voice slipped. Through the crack his voice softened into velvet when he wanted to charm someone. "Babe, I'm only here for the money." In thickened moments, everything runs slow. I looked at my own hand on the knob, my fingers trembling like they awaited an unseen blow. "As soon as I've got enough, I'll come back to you." She's blind enough not to see. I don't love her, just her bank account. A chuckle, thin and sharp, slid under my skin. The paper bag slipped from my grip, hitting the wooden floor with a dry clink like a coin dropped into emptiness. I staggered back, spine pressed cold to the wall, though Austin outside was blazing. My eyes locked, my ears dialed themselves louder like an old radio. A few more months and it's ready to launch. She's generous, pays off student loans, buys me a car, injects capital she thinks we're building a future. He paused, perhaps. Smiling, then lowered his voice to a sugar that stung. Faye, wait for me. The name I'd heard it before, brushed off like dust on my neck. An ex, in the past, we're just friends now. I had believed him. I believed people, especially good storytellers. The faint scent of roasting coffee lingered. In the hallway, but in my mouth, there was only the metallic temps of a truth shattered. My knees buckled, crouched, instinctively shielding my belly like a cat curling around its kitten. Inside, I pictured a bean-sized seed still asleep, oblivious to knife-like words slicing the air inches away. Tessa's blind. He had meant me. A scribble inked across my forehead, through my hair. Through nights, I spent hunched over scheduling, weekends inspecting cafes. Messages asking if he'd eaten lunch so I could bring him a chicken mustard sandwich. Blind? Or was I polite too? My own heart, choosing not to suspect, choosing to trust beauty. Not all faith is foolish. Some faith is like planting basil on a windowsill. Maybe it won't survive the winter, but its fragrance makes that meal kind. Behind the door, Darren kept talking, laughing, painting futures with colors he claimed sole ownership of. I sat in silence, letting the keywords drop into memory like marbles into a glass jar. Launch, raise, pull out, go back. Each fell with a muted clink. And then, strange and sudden, after ruin came something else, sharp as a bakery counter's glass. Clarity. I picked up the bag. My hand no longer shook. In my mind, ribbons of strategy wound themselves. Check account. Permissions, review pending contracts, ask Hugh about the trust, verify inventory. Examine payments Darren had suggested recently. I could see the accounting screen's windows lined like tidy picture frames. Each detail would fall into place. No room left for sweet chaos. My phone buzzed. A text from Priya. You dropping by location for? I'm interviewing the farm owner at lunch. Need sourcing details. I typed back, give me 20 minutes. My thumbs hesitated, then added, Priya. After that, come with me somewhere. She answered with a wide-eye heart emoji, her usual signal when sensing something was up. Inside, the call ended. Darren's shadow slid across the sunstripe like wet ink. I stood before he opened the door. His face appeared pleasant, familiar eyes that could melt any customer when he spoke of responsible coffee experiences. You're here. I was just tweaking slides for the afternoon meeting, he said, reaching automatically for the insulated mug I usually brought him. Yes, I answered, voice flat as a pond before the stone drops. Don't forget lunch. I'm heading to know. 4, then back to accounting. He nodded, kissed my cheek. His warmth skimmed my skin like a towel washed clean, but stripped of sunlight. I stepped outside. Austin's sunlight struck my lids. A wind chime jingled on the porch. Butter scents floated from the oven. Dried orange slices perfumed the counter. A man waited for a smoked meat sandwich, murmuring into his phone about an upcoming meeting. A little girl hugged her dog, tilting her head to the chalkboard menu to see if today had cinnamon sugar donuts. The world carried on, noisy and gentle. Only one thing inside me shifted, from soft to hard, from trust to knowledge. I placed my hand on my belly. Little one, I whispered. I heard. It's okay. I'm here. Crossing the yard, I entered the accounting office, powered on the computer. The screen lit up as if someone had turned on a lamp in a dark room. I pulled out a chair, opened the folder, Finance Access Permissions. The cursor blinked steady as a calm heartbeat. On the desk, the pharmacy bag sat neatly, silent as an answer already decided. I scrolled to my contacts, found Hugh Kavanaugh. My finger hovered over call. From the window, sunlight poured across the desk, golden as an egg yolk. I inhaled, pressed. "Hugh, it's Tessa. I need to rearrange everything as soon as possible." Whenever I look back, those first days still feel like a summer storm sudden. Heavy with heat and dazzling light, leaving me trembling and exhilarated at once. Darren appeared just when I thought I had finally learned to stand on my own after my mother's death and the burden of running the Hearth and Hope chain in Austin. It was a June evening, when Café No. 1 stayed open later than usual for a community poetry reading. I sat at the counter corner, tallying invoices for supplies, so exhausted my eyes blurred over. Darren walked in with the air of a drifter, sand-colored linen shirt, an old notebook in hand. He ordered a cold brew and, instead of sitting alone, came straight to my table. "You look like you're trying to swallow a mountain of paperwork." "Not pastries," he joked, setting his glass down. "Mind if I join you? Who knows, maybe I can help." I laughed, my first real laugh in weeks of relentless work. "If you've got a magic trick for these numbers, be my guest." Darren had no magic, but he had a way of telling stories that made me forget my tension. He asked about the cafe, about the brand's history, listening intently as though every detail about my mother and our heirloom recipes was a state secret. "A brand born of family and rooted in community," he said, eyes gleaming. "You have in your hands what giant corporations spend millions trying to fake." I remember the softening of my heart at those words. Not because of the compliment itself, but because he made me feel that what I was struggling to keep alive every day actually mattered. We began to see each other more often. He said he'd once worked in hospitality, but quit, tired of the grind, and now wanted to launch a pop-up model blending coffee with global street food. His ideas seemed to echo my own dream, to expand Hearth and Hope into a crossroads of culture, keeping Austin's soul while telling a worldwide story. Soon Darren was woven into my daily life. He woke at 4 with me to check ovens, walked me through farmers markets on weekends, sometimes sat for hours in the accounting office just to keep you company with the numbers. I had grown used to silence after my mother's passing, so his presence was like music suddenly filling a long-muted room. But from then on, my wallet began to open wider. When Darren lamented his crushing student loans, I wrote the first check, thinking, if he breathes easier, I'll worry less too. When his old car broke down on the highway, I signed the advance for a new sedan, telling myself it was an investment for both of us. Then, when Darren pitched a pop-up with colorful slides, I didn't hesitate to wire him the seed money each time. Darren whispered words that melted me. "No one has ever believed in me like you, or we're going to be an unstoppable team." I remember one night, after I signed the largest transfer $100,000 for a marketing consultancy he'd sketched out. He held me tight, voice trembling. "I swear, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me." In the dark, I believed every syllable. Priya, my best friend, wasn't so easily swept into the storm. She warned me, "Tess, this is moving too fast. A man moving in after only 3 months. That's not normal." I brushed it off with a smile. He understands me, Priya, and he really wants to be here. Over time, even Priya softened, seeing how much brighter I looked after years of gloom. My family was cautious too, but Darren charmed them with talk of the future. "He looks at you like you're the moon," my sister whispered once at dinner. "If he's pretending, he deserves an Oscar." I was convinced it wasn't an act, was love. For 3 years, Darren spun a cocoon around me. Warm, sweet, so snug I couldn't see the holes. I didn't realize each promise, each new project, was another thread binding me tighter to financial dependence. I thought we were building a shared dream until that fateful morning when 2 pink lines appeared, and the phone call behind the door shattered the storm into hail. Sitting on the office bed, Clutching the paper bag from the pharmacy, I asked myself, did I love him more only the mirage he painted? But another thought cut in, sharp and undeniable, even if it was a mirage. The price I had paid was steep, and it might not be done yet. In the mirror, my face looked pale, but my eyes shone clearer than ever. No more blind trust. I knew I had to begin right from the cracks. Darren had called my love blindness. Then I would open my eyes wide, stare down his game and end it. That noon, Austin sweltered. Sunlight poured gold onto the sidewalks, bouncing off the glass panes of office towers. I stood before the gray stone building that housed Hugh Kavanaugh's office, the family lawyer who had known us since my mother was alive, and felt my heart pound as hard as when I saw those 2 pink lines earlier that morning. But this time, the rhythm carried not joy, but a deep, gnawing fear. The fear of losing everything. I drew a long breath, then pushed the door open. Inside, the faint scent of pine wood and roasted coffee made it easier to breathe. Hugh greeted me with a firm handshake. He was in his 50s, hair salt and pepper, eyes patient like a man who had watched too many lives collapse, and guided more than a few back to their feet. "Tessa," he said, voice both surprised and concerned. "Don't usually call me in such a rush. What's wrong?" I set my tote down, pulling out the bundle of papers I had stuffed inside. Bank statements, contracts Darren had persuaded me to sign, transfer slips. My fingers trembled as I slid them across the desk. I need to protect everything, as quickly as possible, and it must stay completely discreet. He studied me for a long moment, then removed his glasses, folding his hands. "Tessa, tell me directly, what kind of trouble are you in?" My lips were dry. I wanted to speak of the phone call, the name Faye, the lies still ringing in my ears, but my throat locked. Instead, I opened my phone, pressed play. The first recording I had captured with the tiny device hidden in the living room filled the office. Darren's laugh, his bragging about the money he had just wrung out of me. The room fell silent. Hugh leaned back, brows knitting. When the clip ended, he nodded slowly. "I understand." Taya clenched my hands, nails cutting into my palms. "I let him in too deep. He knows nearly everything about the cafe's finances. He always had reasons, needed data to build pitch decks, needed access to simplify management. I thought it was love, a partnership, but it was all a trap." My voice cracked on the last word. Hugh didn't rush to comfort. He jotted a few quick notes. "First, we freeze every access point. You're still the sole legal owner. We'll set up a trust to protect the assets, funneling all profits and managerial rights into it. Aaron won't be able to touch them." I swallowed, hard nodding. I want him locked out without another cent. "Good." He tapped the file. "Second, you need to keep gathering evidence. Recordings like this will be crucial. If he tries to dispute or deny, we'll have solid proof." Hearing that, a cold but steady clarity seeped into me. All morning I'd been stunned and raw. But as Hugh laid out strategy steps, structure, defenses, I felt as though I had stepped onto a new stage. No longer the deceived victim, but someone preparing to strike back. "And what about what he's already taken?" My voice broke, recalling the $100,000 transfer for his marketing project, the student loans I had paid off, the new car. "Can I recover any of it?" Hugh thought for a moment. "Legally, he could argue you gave it voluntarily. But if we prove intent to defraud with consistent evidence, we can at least force partial restitution. More importantly, we'll cut off his ability to repeat this with someone else." At that, I drew a deep breath. Yes, I didn't just want to keep what was mine. I wanted to stop him from running this same script on another woman. Hugh tilted his head, studying me as if to make sure I was ready. "Are you strong enough for this? Because once we begin, There's no returning to what it was. I placed a hand over my belly, where the tiny seed of life grew quietly. I don't have another choice. For my child, for myself. His eyes softened. He nodded firmly. Then I'll draft everything today. By this evening, Darren won't be able to touch a single account. When I stepped out, Austin's sun was still blazing, but I felt a thin sheet of ice settle around my heart. It didn't paralyze me. It kept me alert. Every tear that wanted to fall froze back, leaving space for a colder, sharper strength. The paper bag from the pharmacy still rested in my tote. I brushed it lightly as a reminder. That secret would be my fuel. Darren thought I was blind. But he didn't know that from this moment on, my eyes were wide open, and I would watch him fall step by step with nothing less than perfect clarity. Late afternoon draped Austin in pale lavender skies. Sunlight scattered across the streets like thin threads. I stood outside Bloom and Vine, a flower shop on the corner of East 6th, clutching my tote, my palm damp with sweat. This was not where I wanted to be, nor the person I wanted to see. But if the plan Hugh and I were drawing up had any chance of success, I had to step inside. The name Faye Winters had once been nothing more than a smudge in Darren's story. Just the past, nothing more. I had believed him. Now I knew nothing is more dangerous than what he dismisses as the past. A bell tinkled as I pushed the door. Scents of roses and lavender spilled out, gentle yet catching in my throat. Inside, a platinum blonde woman was arranging flowers in a tall glass vase. She turned, pale gray eyes flicking across my face, then offered the polite smile of a shopkeeper. "Hello, how can I help you?" I stepped closer, my pulse hammering. "I want to talk not about flowers, about Darren Cole." The smile vanished. Faye's face shifted instantly, like a calm lake breaking into ripples. She set down her shears, folded her arms. "I'm guessing you're Tessa." Her voice dropped, stripped of pleasantries. I nodded. No reason to circle around. "I've heard enough to know he's been playing both of us. I think we could work together." Silence stretched. Faye scanned me from head to toe, eyes sharp as if searching for cracks. "Work together. You think I want to see the woman? Sharing a bed with the man who destroyed my life." Her words sliced like a blade across skin, but I didn't flinch. "I understand. And I'm not here to apologize for him. I'm here because I'm also a victim. Maybe in a different way, but the result is the same. He took money, trust, and he'll take more if I don't stop him." Faye let out a short laugh, cold as glass. "You think you're special?" He drained our joint account and vanished like smoke. I was stupid enough to go to the police, but I had no evidence. Then he found you a woman inheriting a beloved cafe chain, full of money and trust. Perfect. I bit my lip, then pulled a small recorder from my tote. "The difference is, I have proof." His voice, word for word. "And I know you do too." Her eyes flickered, just briefly, before she masked it. "And what? You'll take it to court." Men like him slip through like eels. Believe me, I tried. I drew a steady breath, keeping my voice calm. I don't plan to rely only on the courts. I want him exposed in front of every friend, partner, investor he's trying to con. I want his name ruined so badly he'll never get near another woman again. And I can't do that alone. Faye arched a brow, stepping around the counter. "Closer now. You think we could be allies?" "After everything, we share the same enemy," I said, my voice low. "And sometimes the enemy of your enemy is the only one who truly understands you." The air in the flower shop thickened. We stood across from each other, two women taught to hate one another over a man yet now recognizing ourselves in each other's eyes, at last. Faye sighed, returned to the counter, and pulled a phone from the drawer. She opened a folder of recordings, tapped a file. Darren's voice poured out, smooth and sugary. She never suspects a thing. Just a little longer, and I'll have enough. To start over with you, we'll live the dream life. My fists clenched, pain and fury colliding. Faye stopped the playback, slammed the phone onto the counter. I've got dozens of these. At first, I kept them just to remind myself never to believe him again. Now, maybe they'll serve a purpose. I nodded slowly. If you agree, we'll use them together. But we'll need a plan thorough, airtight, unexpected. We'll let him believe he's winning right until the last moment. Faye paused, then extended her hand. If we're doing this, we make sure he goes down completely. Ali's. I slid my hand into hers, the grip so firm I could feel the steel of her resolve beneath her skin. Ali's. Outside, the streetlights blinked on, casting their glow over to women striking a pact in a small flower shop. A strange beginning for a stranger alliance. But I knew, from that moment, Darren Cole was no longer facing a naive woman alone. He was facing Tuand. Both were ready to change the game. Late summer in Austin burned hot, heat shimmering up from the sidewalks like a pane of glass vibrating in the air. I sat in the upstairs office above Cafe No. An Excel sheet full of numbers on one screen, emails piling on the other. But my mind wasn't on any of it. Instead of numbers, I was rehearsing every line of dialogue from the play Faye, and I had begun to write. Faye called it a 2-act play. I would continue as the devoted girlfriend, while she would step back into the role of the lingering ex. So Darren would believe he had both a safe home and a tempting new destination. The performance began the very next day after we shook hands. That afternoon, Darren walked into the office, setting his laptop on my desk with a radiant smile. I just met with a potential investor. You'll be amazed when you hear how much they're willing to put in. I swiveled my chair, hiding contempt behind a mask of calm. Really? That's wonderful. I handed him the iced coffee I'd prepared exactly as he liked, 2 spoons of brown sugar, a dusting of cinnamon on the foam. You always know how to move things forward. He took a sip, eyes lighting up like a child being praised. I couldn't do it without you behind me. You're my angel, Tess. I smiled, brushing my hand lightly over his. Inside, cold fury surged, but outwardly, I kept the gaze of blind trust. This was my role. Let him believe I was naive and malleable. That evening, a message from Faye arrived. He called. Said he'll drop by the flower shop this week. I'll play the part. The hurt woman who still hasn't fully let go. Him think I'm slowly opening up again. I typed back, perfect. The more calls, the better. Just let him talk. Faye sent an audio clip, Darren whispering into the phone, voice so sweet that anyone else might think he was truly in love. Soon, baby, I'll have enough, soon. Tess still suspects nothing. She just wired another 20 grand for the marketing project. I heard my own name, there cast as the fool in his story. Instead of breaking, I noted the date and time. Each recording, each text, each fragment of evidence was now another piece for the final act. A week later, we staged Act 2. I casually brought up an expense for the cafes. I think we should upgrade the espresso machine at Cafe No. Sen. To many customers, the old ones overworked. Darren pounced instantly. Why don't I handle that? I know a supplier could save us a lot. I pretended to weigh it, then nodded as though hesitating. If you're sure, trust me. Tess. His smile brimmed with confidence. You always trust me. I nodded again, suppressing the smirk itching to escape. Yes, I would go on trusting him, but only inside this play. While I played the doting girlfriend, Faye took on the part of the patient ex. She sent me a recording of their meeting in a small cafe near her flower shop. Darren had chosen a secluded corner, careful but not careful enough to evade the tiny recorder hidden in Faye's bag. I miss you so much, Faye. I just have to stay with Tess a little longer. You understand, don't you? Faye let her voice tremble slightly, enough to hook him. I don't know, Darren. You hurt me too badly. I can't go through being abandoned again. No. Darren rushed to reassure. Just a few more months, and then you and I will have everything. Listening back, my stomach nodded. Yet at the same time, I saw it clearly. The more he believed, he held both of us in his hands. The blinder he became to the trap tightening around him. Faye and I began meeting more often, usually at a small diner off downtown. We'd sit in the corner, laptops open, sharing a pair of earbuds. I never thought I'd be sitting here with you, Faye admitted, twisting her hands. Back then, I just wanted to strangle you. Thought you stole him from me. I shook my head, voice low. He stole both of us, in different ways. But now, he doesn't get another chance. We clinked our iced coffees together. No need for more words, an unspoken alliance had formed. Those days, I lived two lives. In the morning, I ran Hearth and Hope, smiling at staff, greeting regulars. With a nod. At night, I slipped into the role of the gentle girlfriend cooking dinner, listening as Darren boasted about the big project. I nodded, offered small encouragements while inside. Each word of his was a red-flagged memo, evidence added to the file. Late at night, when Darren slept, I opened my laptop, backed up recordings, screenshotted texts, logged times and dates. Each click was another thread in the net I was weaving tighter. One Friday night, Darren reclined on the sofa, swirling the red wine I poured. You know, Tess, some people are born to be supporters. You're one of them. Because of you, I can finally become the man I'm meant to be. I smiled, but in my heart came a vow. He would soon become the man everyone saw for who he really was. And when the curtain fell, there would be no place left for him to hide. On the surface, Darren believed he was winning. He thought he held to women in the palm of his hand, everything moving to his design. But he had no idea. This play had only one ending and Faye, and I held the pen that would write it. By September, Austin had softened after the scorching heat. The first breaths of autumn carried cool air, enough to make people sigh with relief. I sat in the upstairs office of Café No. 1, staring at an invitation printed on thick ivory craft paper. In bold blue ink, it read, Hearth and Hope, Community Night, Gratitude, Fundraising, Connection. Only those who looked closely would realize this was no ordinary party. I traced a finger over the words, thinking of the trap being assembled, piece by piece. Darren believed this was the launch gala for our big project, his chance to present his pop-up concept, charm investors, and show everyone he was a rising young entrepreneur. In truth, it would be a stage where his mask was ripped away, where every sweet laugh of his would be replaced with recordings cold enough to freeze the room. That morning, I met Faye and Priya in the small meeting room behind the kitchen. Priya opened her laptop, the screen crowded with files, audio, video, bank statements. I've arranged them chronologically. Every clip is time-stamped, lined up with emails and transfers. Once we play them, no one can say they're fabricated. Faye folded her arms, eyes gleaming with an icy light. I'll play the role of the fragile ex. He thinks I still care. But at the right moment, I'll step out. Trust me, he won't have time to breathe. I nodded, and Kellen will handle the tech. Just then, Kellen, Priya's friend, an event specialist, walked in, headphones slung around his neck. Sound and projection are covered. We'll rig speakers around the room so every word of those recordings comes through crystal clear. The screen will show file names and dates. Straightforward, undeniable. Looking at the three of them, I saw it, a new kind of bond. Not sympathy, not pity, resolve. No one here was on the sidelines anymore. Darren, meanwhile, was electric with excitement. That evening, over dinner, he grinned, sipping wine. "This gala is going to be the turning point, Tess. Richard Elliott confirmed he's coming. Do you? Know how many startups he's funded? This is it. Our shot." I set the plate of roasted chicken on the table, masking my satisfaction with a look of joy. "That's amazing. You deserve it all." He slipped an arm around me, voice dropping tender. "It's all thanks to you. You believed, you invested. You're my foundation. After this night, we won't have to worry anymore." I kissed his cheek lightly, smiling. Inside, my thoughts whispered, "Yes, after tonight, everything will change." But not the way you think. For 2 weeks of preparation, Darren threw himself into his fantasy. Meetings with investors, endless phone calls, hours polishing. Slides, I let him whirl in it. Every moment he was lost in delusion was another tightening of the snare. Faye kept fielding his calls. One evening she sent me another recording. "Faye, you'll be proud when you see me at the gala. Everyone will be cheering. And once I've got capital, we'll start over. Tess still believes in me completely." Hearing it, a stab of pain shot through me, but alongside it came a chill of certainty. Start over. No, he would end on the night of the event. I chose a long black dress, simple, elegant. My hair swept into a neat bun. I wanted to look composed, in control, not the betrayed woman, but the woman who owned the stage. The banquet hall glowed warmly, sunflowers on tables, cinnamon-scented candles flickering, a menu of hearth and hope favorites. Guests streamed in, friends, family, employees, her, and the very investors Darren had dreamed of impressing. He was radiant, shaking hands, smiling that same dazzling smile that once deceived me. Every so often, he leaned in to whisper, "See? This is our beginning." I only nodded, returning his smile. But deep inside, I was counting down minutes until the curtain dropped. When guests were seated, I raised my glass. Thank you all for joining us tonight for Hearth and Hope Community Night. We're here to celebrate, to give thanks, and to look back at the journey so far. Applause rippled, laughter filled the air. Beside me, Darren sat confident, convinced. He was the star of the evening. He didn't know that on the tech deck, Kellen was waiting for my signal. I glanced around the room, candlelight shimmering in glasses of red wine. Beyond the doors, Faye was ready. My heart pounded, but not with fear. It beat with anticipation, the moment when truth would tear through the sugar-coated shell. Darren had built over 3 long years. This gala was no celebration. It was a perfect trap. And our prey had walked in willingly, smiling, glowing completely. Unaware the chair beneath him was about to become a public scaffold. The room quieted as servers cleared away the main course. The scents of roasted meat and red wine sauce still lingered in the air, mingling with the glow of candlelight. Darren stood, lifting his glass, smiling as though the entire world sat neatly in his palm. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, voice confident, carrying easily across the room. "Without Tess, none of this would be possible. She is the soul behind every effort. We stand at the threshold of a new journey, and I am proud to have her by my side." Applause broke out. All eyes turned toward me. I smiled back, nodding, presenting the image of the grateful, blissful partner. But beneath the table, my hand clenched the tiny remote hidden under my napkin. When Darren sat down, I rose. "I'd like to share something too," I said, voice steady. "Over the past 3 years, I've learned a lot about business, about trust, and about people." Soft tings sounded as I pressed the button. The speakers around the room came alive, not with Darren's polished speech, but with his own voice, warm and honeyed, saying something else entirely. "She doesn't suspect a thing." Just a little longer, and I'll have enough to start over. With you. The atmosphere dropped into silence, like a stone sinking through still water. Guests froze mid-gesture. Glasses paused halfway to lips. Tess just wired another 20 grand. She thinks we're building a future. Naive, isn't she? Every head swiveled toward Darren. His face drained of color, eyes wide under the spotlight. He leaped up, stammering, This is doctored. It's not real. I lifted a hand calmly. We haven't heard everything yet. The audio rolled on. Darren's laugh filled the air. Faye, just a few more months. I'll leave her and come back to you. The money will all be handled. Murmurs rippled across the room, confusion and outrage swirling among the guests. Then the banquet doors opened. Faye stepped in, dressed in a blazing red gown, platinum hair, gleaming beneath the lights. She walked slowly, heels striking the wood floor like the beat of a drum. That's right, Darren, she said, her voice cold but clear. You've called me every week, promising to return. And you know what? I recorded every word. Darren looked like a man struck down. He reached toward her desperately, voice breaking. Faye, tell them, you know I love you. This was all. For us, Faye laughed a sharp sound, like glass shattering. Love? I don't love you. I just want you to pay. And tonight, with Tess, we're making sure you do. The murmurs rose into sharp breaths, angry hisses. I placed a thick folder before Darren. All accounts have been frozen. Every piece of evidence has been delivered to my lawyer and the authorities. Darren, your game is over. He stared at me, then at Faye, like a trapped animal searching. For an exit, you two allied. I held my head high, voice firm. You thought you could divide us, but you forgot one truth. Sometimes the people you try to exploit choose to stand together. And when that happens, you have no chance. The room's air grew heavy, everyone watching in silence. Darren trembled, lips moving, but no words escaping. The once charming face that fooled so many was now only a mask cracked wide open. I turned to the guests, voice calm. I'm sorry tonight became this. But some truths cannot stay hidden. Tonight isn't about honoring an entrepreneur, it's about exposing a fraud. Applause broke out one person, then another, then the whole. Room Priya, my sister, familiar partners, all rose to their feet. Their support told like a bell sealing Darren's fate. He dropped his gaze. Then suddenly shoved his chair aside, fleeing the room amid a storm of furious whispers. Faye lifted her glass of water toward me. The conman walked right into his own snare. I nodded, a weight lifting from me. The gala was not yet over, but the game had already ended. News of Hearth and Hope Community Nights spread like a summer storm sweeping through Austin's boulevards. By the next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Reporters calling. Emails from business magazines, even startup blogs chasing the story. They had heard about a young entrepreneur being unmasked in the middle of a gala and wanted details. I stood in my office, steam curling from a mug of herbal tea, fingers brushing across a stack of files. I had only slept a few hours. But exhaustion couldn't outweigh the relief I felt. Darren had vanished from the house after fleeing the gala, leaving behind a half-packed suitcase in the bedroom and his laptop, which I had locked out of all systems that very night. Faye came in, a brown leather folder in her hands. She dropped it on the desk with a thud. Here, every recording, text, statement, enough to make sure he never finds a place to stand again. I raised a brow. We're really going to make all of this public? Her arms folded, her gaze sharp but softened at the edges. You said it yourself. You don't need to be a hero, but you want to make sure he can't repeat this with anyone else. Public exposure is the only way. Once he loses credibility, no one will ever give him another chance. I nodded, feeling a strange, steady strength rise in me. Then together it is. We chose a local newspaper, first credible, community-rooted, the kind of story that could ripple outward. The journalist, Clara, agreed to meet that same afternoon in a small cafe behind location No. 2. A recorder sat between us, Clara's. Eyes fixed, while Faye and I took turns telling everything. I spoke about blind trust, about the money that had bled away, about sweet promises now turned into evidence. Faye told of being left with empty accounts, of the humiliation of reporting him to police only to be dismissed for lack of proof. Clara listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding. At the end, she said, "This isn't just about two women betrayed. It's a cautionary tale for anyone who's ever trusted blindly. I'll write it all of it, fully and honestly." When the article went live, the headline blazed, "Mask off, from promising young entrepreneur to financial and emotional fraud." It carried snippets of audio transcripts, screenshots of bank statements, and even commentary from Hugh confirming the legal steps taken to protect my assets. The reaction was louder than I expected. Startup forums buzzed. Other women began emailing me, confessing they too had been approached by Darren pitched dreams of ventures, only for him to disappear after borrowing money. Each story was another puzzle piece, together forming the full picture of his serial scams. One evening, I sat in my office reading through these messages, feeling both sorrow and vindication. My hand rested on my belly, where I felt the faintest flutter, like a soft tap from within. I whispered, "You'll never have to live in a world where he can fool anyone else again." Darren tried to push back, but weakly. A lawyer, I didn't. No sent a letter accusing me of defamation and demanding the article be retracted. Hugh skimmed it and smirked. "We've got airtight evidence. This is nothing but desperation." He was right. Soon after, Darren disappeared from Austin. Someone claimed to spot him in a small town out of state, bussing tables in a bar, but to me, it no longer mattered. What mattered was that here, in Austin, in the circles he once craved, his name now meant one thing: fraud. No second chances. 1. Early morning, I opened Cafe No. 1. The scent of waffles filled the air. Customers trickled in for coffee to go. A regular ran older man with his newspaper laid the Austin Chronicle on the counter, pointing to page 2 where our story was. Still being discussed. "Young lady, you were brave. People needed to hear this." I smiled, nodding softly. "Thank you. I didn't do it for praise. I did it so no one else would go through what I did." Morning light spilled through the window, glinting on the framed photo of my mother behind the counter. Her gaze firm, yet tender met mine. I knew, wherever she was, she would be proud. That evening, Faye stopped by with a bouquet of white roses. She set them in a glass vase on the table, smiling faintly. "A new beginning. For you, for me." I poured us both hot mint tea. "Yes. Not for revenge, for peace. He can't touch anyone anymore, and we can move on." Faye nodded, her eyes bright, the guarded look gone for the first time. We clinked our cups together, no words needed. Outside, the city carried on with its hum. But inside that small room of hearth and hope, I felt real peace for the first time in months. After all the noise, I chose to step away from the center of Austin, leaving behind the spacious apartment I had once shared with Darren. I moved into a small house in the suburbs, not far from the city, but quiet enough to hear wind stirring through the oaks, with a backyard just big enough to plant a patch of lavender. The house had only 2 bedrooms, a red-tiled roof, and old wooden floors that creaked with every step. But to me, it was a true beginning, place entirely my own. On my first morning there, I flung open the windows and breathed in the mix of aged wood and the neighbor's garden flowers. On the table lay a list of things to do: repaint the small room, install lights, assemble the crib I had ordered. I wanted everything perfect for the child soon to arrive, a child who didn't need a false father. Only unconditional love from a mother. Priya arrived carrying a can of pale yellow paint. She laughed, hand on her hip. "You picked this color. Soft, warm, it suits you." "Not me," I corrected gently, resting my hand on my growing belly. "For the baby." Together we worked. Soon the room turned into a canvas of spring. Walls painted a calm yellow, sunlight streaming through the window, making the space glow. With each brushstroke, I whispered silently, "You will grow up in this room. Safe, unafraid." That afternoon, Faye brought a long box. "For you," she said, a little shy. Inside was a brand new white wooden crib, smooth but tricky to assemble. "You picked this yourself?" I asked, running my hand along the polished slats, double quotes. "Yes. I'm not good at this kind of thing, but I thought it could stand for a different kind of beginning. Not to forget, but to remember that we survived." We spent the whole afternoon fumbling with screws, consulting the instructions, and laughing when we got pieces backward. When at last the crib stood solid in the middle of the room, my throat tightened. I saw the future in it, a place my baby would sleep. The space where first cries and first laughter would echo. By evening, the room was ready. The white crib. Curtains embroidered with little clouds. A small bookshelf Priya had brought filled with fairy tales. I sat in the wooden chair, hand on my belly. Feeling the gentle kick like a tiny greeting, I whispered, "You don't have a father worthy of you, but you have a mother, and I promise to love you enough for both." Tears came, but they were no longer heavy. They were tears of gratitude. A heart once broken but now beating stronger for the little life growing day by day inside me. From time to time, still received messages from strangers, women thanking me for exposing Darren. I read them with a faint smile, then went back to painting shelves, folding blankets. I no longer cared about being anyone's hero. What mattered was building a home where my child would learn that trust is not a mistake and that love can heal every wound in that little house. With the brand new crib, I finally found peace. No gala lights, no applause. Just the whisper of wind against the windows and a tiny heart waiting to be welcomed. Winter came earlier than usual. Austin lay beneath a crisp chill, wind rushing through bare branches outside the porch. I sat in the freshly finished small room, soft yellow lamplight falling over the white crib. On the desk rested my mother's brown leather notebook, the one she once used to write down recipes, which I had now turned into a journal for my baby. I wrote slowly, each line flowing from the heart. "My love, when you are old enough to read these words, I want you to know you were wanted from the very first moment." I cried, I trembled, but above all, I was happy. From that moment on, every decision I made was for you. The pen paused. I remembered the gala night, the stares as Darren was unmasked. I remembered shaking Faye's hand in the flower shop, the way our eyes understood each other without words. I remembered Priya patiently spending hours building a little bookshelf. Each memory a piece that carried me to this day, a day without fear. A day devoted to preparing for a new dawn. A gentle kick pressed against my belly. I smiled, resting my hand on the knit of my sweater. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm still here." The phone on the desk buzzed. An unknown number. I hesitated, then opened it. A short message, "You think you've won. This isn't over." I stared at the words, but the old surge of panic never came. Just a fleeting chill, then calm. I took a screenshot, forwarded it to Hugh with the note, "Add this to the restraining order file." Then I blocked the number. Done, I turned back to you. The desk inhaled deeply. The clock ticked steady on the wall. The wind teased the curtains outside. I wrote on, "You will grow up in this house, surrounded by unconditional love. You will know that trust is precious, and if someone betrays you, it will never be your fault. You will not need to shrink or harden yourself to feel safe. You only need to be who you are, because I will be here. I promise." Later that night, Faye and Priya stopped by with a pot of hot chicken soup. We ate together in the living room. Golden light bathing the walls, laughter mingling with the soft clink of spoons against bowls. No one mentioned Darren. There was no need. After they left, I returned to the baby's room. The crib stood quietly under the lamp. I sat in the wooden chair, hand on my belly, whispering, "My love, the world out there may not always be kind, but you will always have a safe place to come back to. Here, with me." The baby kicked gently, as if in reply. I closed my eyes, warmth spreading through me. I knew the road ahead would not be easy, but I also knew I was no longer the blind woman of 3 years ago. I had learned to rise, to protect myself and my child, to turn brokenness into strength. Outside, the winter wind still blew. But inside that little room, there was light. There was warmth, and there was a promise lit like a flame. A promise for my child, perhaps. The most beautiful part of this story isn't Darren's downfall, but the choice Tessa made. Even after betrayal, even after being deceived, she chose to keep the life growing inside her and to give her child all the love she had. Thank you for listening with Snail Story. If today's story touched you, please share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe so that each week we can walk together through another journey of healing and hope.